Hey guys, tonight we stroll softly into a dusty corner of Greek mythology far from the battlefield, far from the thunderbolts and seductions and winged sandals. No, tonight we wander into a quieter tale, one with an olive tree, a very persistent goddess, and yes, a donkey with a name, who may or may not have been divine, or cursed, or just hungry. You're standing in a sun-warmed valley, somewhere around 3,000 years ago, where the soil is dry. The cicadas are complaining softly in the olive branches, and there's an important civic decision being made. The gods have gathered to name a brand new city, and two of them, Athena, goddess of wisdom, and Poseidon, god of horses and saltwater moods, have each decided they deserve the honor. Unfortunately for you, you are a mortal, which means you're standing on the edge of this divine contest, holding a slightly crooked staff, and hoping no one notices you're barefoot and extremely underqualified to judge deities. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and local time down in the comments. It's fun seeing who else wanders these sleepy paths with us. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by trudging up the rocky slope of an unnamed hill, your sandals scraping against stone, the kind that looks like it was placed by someone with very dramatic aesthetic preferences. The sky overhead is cloudless, as if even Zeus is too tired to bother with weather right now. A crowd has gathered local mortals in tunics and cloaks, some holding fig leaves, some fanning themselves with bits of pottery. There's excitement in the air, sure, but also confusion. Two gods have shown up, and they both want the same thing: this hilltop city. Your hilltop city. The one your uncle just started building a goat market in. The one your cousin keeps saying needs better drainage. Poseidon arrives first. He stomps up the hill with his trident, hair sea-damp, robe a little too majestic for the terrain. Without so much as a hello, he slams his trident into the earth. The ground rumbles, rocks split, and out gushes a salty spring. Yes, salt water. Right into the city's future main square. It glistens under the sun. The mortals gasp, but only partly out of awe. Some whisper that it smells faintly like fish. Others wonder if anyone remembered to bring cups. Poseidon, clearly proud, folds his arms and waits for applause. Then, from the other side of the hill, Athena arrives. No thunder. No trident. Just a calm breeze, a thoughtful expression, and an olive branch in her hand. She kneels, plants it. The earth doesn't shake, but it does shift. Subtly, like it's exhaling after holding its breath for too long. From that branch, an olive tree begins to grow. Slow at first, then faster. Branches stretch skyward. Leaves unfold like green whispers. Small, hard olives dangle from the limbs. Within moments, there it is, a full-grown olive tree, basking quietly in the sun. No splash, no drama, just nourishment. The mortals lean in. Someone near you sniffs an olive. A woman bites into one, grimaces at the bitterness, then shrugs. Needs oil, she says. Still, there's a feeling in the air like something wise just happened, and that's when the gods turn to you. Not you personally, but you as part of the collective mortal voting body. Because, surprisingly, the choice is yours. The gods have decided to leave it to the people. The newly gathered citizens of not yet Athens must choose which gift is more valuable: Poseidon's powerful but impractical saltwater geyser, or Athena's calm, leafy promise of food, oil, and peace. People murmur. A few point at the tree. One man whispers, We could cook with that. Another says, my donkey keeps licking the salt. Which is not a vote, but certainly an opinion. The donkey in question, his name, you later learn, is Anaxagoras brays loudly, interrupting the tension. Somehow, this helps. And slowly. The consensus forms. Olives win. Peace wins. Wisdom wins. Athena wins. And the city, once nameless, is given hers Athens. Poseidon. He scowls. The salt spring bubbles moodily. Somewhere, a fish flops. But the people cheer, and the olive tree stands tall. And Athena, without a word, nods once and turns to leave. And that might have been the end of the tale. Except for the donkey. Because Anaxagoras, the goat market donkey, has just wandered under the sacred olive tree and settled in for a nap. The first of many things he probably shouldn't have done. The donkey Anaxagoras is not what you'd call majestic. His ears are too large. His fur is patchy. And he has the kind of long-suffering expression shared by animals who are constantly blamed for things they didn't do. He does not understand that this olive tree is sacred. He does not understand that two gods just competed in a city-naming contest that he loudly interrupted with a bray that may or may not have influenced public opinion. He only knows that there is shade, and that the grass near the base of the tree is softer than the straw back in the goat market. So he lies down, sighs, and promptly begins chewing something that might be an olive leaf, or might be someone's discarded fig wrapping. You and several other citizens of not yet Athens, but now technically Athens, gather at a respectful distance from the sacred tree. You're not exactly sure if donkeys are allowed this close. You're fairly certain the tree isn't supposed to be napped under. But no one wants to be the first to chase off the donkey that just unintentionally swayed the balance of divine judgment. Anaxagoras blinks once, then farts. Loudly. The gods, fortunately, have departed. Poseidon has retreated to his underwater bachelor cave to sulk, and Athena has returned to Olympus with a list of local improvements, including a modest amphitheater and perhaps someday a library. But back here, under the spreading arms of the olive tree, something is happening. Slowly, carefully, the citizens begin to approach the tree. A woman kneels and plucks an olive. She rolls it between her fingers like a pearl, then holds it to the light. Too bitter, she mutters. But I see potential. A young boy, shirtless and sunburned, plucks a handful of leaves and sniffs them. He sneezes 3 times and runs off giggling. And old Phidon, yes. The same Phidon who once declared apricots to be a coward's fruit, holds up one gnarled hand and announces, "This tree will feed us all." Eventually, once we learn how to not poison ourselves with it, you sit on a rock and watch the sun glint off the leaves. They shimmer slightly in the breeze, green on top, silver beneath. The tree is slender but sturdy, fresh, vibrant. Unlike anything else on this hillside, historians still argue whether this myth was meant to symbolize the shift from seafaring to agriculture, or from war to wisdom, or just a particularly bad public works contest. Some say Athena's gift was chosen for its practicality. Others claim it was divine manipulation dressed up as local democracy. But there's no debate over the olive tree's endurance. Athens becomes a city, a strong one, a stubborn one, and the olive becomes its heart. Oil is pressed, lamps are lit, bread is dipped, skin is rubbed, philosophers begin moisturizing, priests begin blessing, and the people begin fencing off the sacred tree with great care and just enough space for a donkey to still nap nearby. Because Anaxagoras never left. He simply stayed, year after year, dozing in the shade of that first olive tree. He was fed scraps, occasionally honored in festivals by confused children, and once crowned with a floral wreath by a very drunk poet who insisted the donkey understood metaphor. That, at least, is what the local legends say. Others whisper that the donkey was Athena's messenger, a divine animal sent to remind the people to stay humble, or a punishment from Poseidon, cursed to remain until the olive tree bore perfect fruit, or just a very good donkey who knew where the best shade in town was. Regardless, Anaxagoras endured. The olive tree grew, and somewhere in that sleepy corner of the city, wisdom took root. You lie back on the warm stone, listening to the soft breeze in the branches. The leaves rustle like parchment being gently turned. The air smells of sunlight and dust and the faint tang of olives not quite ripe. Somewhere nearby, a donkey exhales in his sleep. And maybe that's the real gift. Not the salt, not the tree, but the pause, the stillness, the ability to sit beneath something ancient and simply be. The days roll forward like smooth stones down a quiet hill, and the olive tree Athena's offering. Your city's new leafy treasure starts to become more than just a plant. It becomes a presence, not exactly worshipped yet, but certainly watched. Farmers pass it with nods. Children touch its bark like it might grant good grades or the ability to sneak extra figs. And you pass by it daily now. It has a pull. This tree, the kind that's hard to explain. Not magical exactly, but also not magical. You feel it every time the wind flutters the silvery undersides of its leaves. Every time you spot a bird nestled in its branches like it has VIP seating to all of Athena's future miracles. And slowly, the tree starts giving. Tiny olives, hard and green at first, show up along the branches. They're not much to look at, smaller than your thumb. Bitter enough to ruin your lunch if you eat them too soon, but they represent something new. Potential, permanence. Olive oil, though that's the real prize. You sit cross-legged on a rock as old Tryphon explains the process pressing the fruit, straining it, letting it settle. His hands are stained with pulp. His breath smells like anchovies and philosophy. You don't eat the olives, he says. You squeeze them, like logic or bad poetry. Behind him, a donkey sneezes. Anaxagoras again. Still here? Still devoted to his nap schedule. Still somehow managing to insert himself into every conversation like a wandering grandparent who forgot why he entered the room. The people begin building small stone walls around the sacred tree, not to exclude it, but to protect it. A low fence, a little platform, a clay basin for rainwater. They light candles near its base during festivals and hang garlands from its branches during harvest season. And eventually, others begin planting more. Cuttings from the sacred tree are taken carefully, reverently, with the kind of ceremonial attention usually reserved for weddings or first dates with particularly intimidating philosophers. These cuttings are planted along paths, beside homes, near temples, each one traced back to the tree. Athena's tree, the first tree. Some say it's immortal, others say it's blessed. A few say it's just a tree, and then immediately apologize, just in case it's listening. And it might be the olive becomes everything. Food. Sure, once the bitterness is cured out, but also fuel for lamps. Anointing oil for rituals. Base for perfumes. Even a lubricant for cart axles and marathon runners. Olive oil enters every part of life, which means Athena, by proxy, does too. Historians marvel at the scope of it. Some argue the olive tree was already sacred in Mycenaean culture before Athena ever picked it up as her divine mascot. Others insist it was a clever propaganda move by Athenian politicians. Goddess endorsed agriculture as ancient brand strategy. But nobody argues with results. You walk the streets and see olive branches on doorways, on pottery, painted onto temple walls. Olive wreaths crown athletes and philosophers alike, though the latter often argue whether winning an argument really qualifies as athleticism. One particularly bold baker starts drizzling olive oil over warm bread and creates something so divine that even the temple priest pause mid-prayer to sneak a bite. And then there's the skincare. Suddenly everyone's rubbing oil into their arms, their faces, their elbows. You're not sure it's helping, but everyone smells fantastic. And that's probably half the battle. Even Anaxagoras receives an olive oil rub-down one afternoon by a giggling trio of kids who insist it's for his joints. He gleams in the sunlight like a blessed loaf of bread. The city's identity starts forming around this tree, this oil, this gift. It's not fast. Nothing divine ever is. But it's real. And all the while, Athena says nothing. No booming voice from the sky. No lightning bolt of approval. Just the tree. Steady. Growing. Giving. That, perhaps, is her way. One morning, you wake early and walk past the sacred tree just as dawn touches its highest leaves. A breeze stirs. The olives sway slightly. And in that moment between night and day, between silence and birdsong, you feel it. That this tree isn't just in your city. It is your city. And the donkey under it, he stretches, yawns, rolls onto his other side, still unimpressed by divine presence, still completely at peace. There's something about donkeys. They never rush. They don't bark. They don't bleat. They don't flap about with feathers. They just are. And Anaxagoras, your city's unofficial, olive-oiled mascot, has taken this philosophy to divine levels. The citizens have mostly accepted his presence under the sacred tree now. He's become a kind of fixture. Tourists well, visitors from the next hill over stop to sketch him. Poets write awkward stanzas about his steadfast loaf-like shape. Priests squint suspiciously at him, unsure if he's a sign from the gods or just a lazy animal with impressive persistence. One child suggests building him a hat. The hat is made from reeds. It does not stay on. Still, Anaxagoras is here for the long haul. You find yourself sitting under the olive tree again late morning now. Sun soft. The buzz of bees making lazy loops between the branches. You're chewing a piece of barely ripened bread dipped in fresh oil, watching the donkey twitch in his sleep. When a commotion begins further down the road, a messenger is arriving breathless, dusty, dramatic. This is always exciting. Messengers never arrive for boring reasons. They show up for war, famine, plagues, or on more relaxing days, updates on which god is currently angry about goat sacrifices. But today, the message is more bureaucratic. The city must formally name and register the sacred tree. Of course, the olive tree. Athena's olive tree. The olive tree isn't just a myth anymore, it's a landmark, an economic asset, and apparently a tax-related object. A group of elders and scholars arrived that afternoon with scrolls, measuring rods, and a level of confidence only attainable by people with sandals tied a little too tightly. They examine the tree, they circle it, they measure the shade. One pokes the bark, another tries to count the olives. A third one gets distracted watching Anaxagoras try and fail to chase a butterfly. After much discussion and one spirited debate over whether the tree technically counts as a resident, the scholars announce the tree will be designated a civic asset of divine origin. This, they explain, means it must be protected, catalogued, and possibly fenced off from, quote, four-legged freeloaders. Anaxagoras brays. The discussion halts. A vote is held. The donkey wins. 12-7. And so the sacred olive tree becomes the first official civic tree of Athens. And Anaxagoras is granted a kind of probationary honorary status. He may remain, provided he does not damage the roots, interrupt ceremonies, or consume more than his fair share of leaves. A garland is placed around his neck. He eats it immediately. Historians still debate whether this part of the myth existed before or after the rise of Athens as a major cultural center. Some say the donkey is a later addition added for comic relief, or perhaps to make Athena seem more relatable. Others insist Anaxagoras was real, a kind of divine accident, a creature who became legend through sheer refusal to leave. And isn't that a bit comforting? That even in a world of gods and monsters and glowing oracles, someone like that could matter. You lean back against the tree, feeling its trunk warm from the sun. The leaves above shiver in a light breeze. Bees continue their slow, humming dance from blossom to blossom. Somewhere, an olive drops and hits the ground with a soft plonk. Anaxagoras stirs. He stands, walks a few feet to the left, turns in a tight circle, then flops back down into the shade like a dropped blanket. A girl nearby claps. He's doing the sun-following thing again. It's true, the donkey has learned how to track the tree's shadow. Not with science, just instinct. He rotates around the tree slowly throughout the day, always finding the coolest patch, like a very sleepy sundial. A painter begins sketching the scene tree. Donkey, children, olives, and mutters something about capturing divine repose. You don't know if it's divine, but it's certainly peaceful. And in a city that is growing louder, busier, grander by the season, that peace matters. A few meters away, someone hangs a small plaque from a branch. It reads, "This tree gifted by Athena. This donkey gifted by uncertain means. Please respect both." And so you do. Afternoon leans into evening, and the air takes on that heavy golden quality that makes everything look like it's been softly toasted. You're sitting near the olive tree again, watching the light bend through the branches, listening to the distant clatter of amphorae in the market, and trying not to think too hard about the philosophical implications of donkey sunbathing. Because now things are getting political. As the olive tree's fame grows, so does its influence. What began as a simple divine gift has now sparked a citywide identity. You can't walk 5 steps without seeing olive motifs on shields, on earrings, on wine jugs that have nothing to do with olives, but apparently sell better when they look olive adjacent. And everyone wants a piece of it. Priests begin composing hymns to the sacred oil. Bakers swear that Athena herself guided their loaves. Philosophers gather beneath the tree in the late afternoon, pretending they're there for quiet thinking, when in reality they just want shade and a place to monologue without paying for wine. One merchant sets up a food stall beside the tree, calling his spread divine dips of the goddess. The olives are bitter, the cheese is sour, but people buy it anyway because the donkey sits nearby, blinking approvingly. Yes, Anaxagoras is still here, somehow rounder than before, possibly due to complimentary fig rations from tourists and a particular fondness for unattended bread baskets. But now there's talk whispers that some officials think the tree should be moved. For protection, they say, to a temple, somewhere more secure. This does not go over well. A protest forms, quiet, respectful, deeply polite but absolutely firm. Locals gather around the tree and form a sitting circle. They sing off-key songs about oil and friendship. Someone brings a lyre. Someone else passes out fried olives. Someone knits a sweater for Anaxagoras that he immediately steps on and drags through the mud. Still, the message is clear. The tree stays here, on the same hill where it was planted, in the soil where Athena's fingers brush the earth, in the shade where the donkey naps. Historians still argue whether this event happened or whether it's a mythologized version of civic unrest involving zoning disputes and sacred land declarations. One fringe scholar even proposed that the tree-moving plot was invented by olive oil competitors in Corinth, trying to stir scandal in Athenian politics. Regardless, the tree does not move. Instead, it becomes more protected. A stone circle is built around it, low and smooth, with carved symbols of olive branches and stylized owls. Visitors are asked to walk softly. Children are encouraged to whisper. Anaxagoras is gently discouraged from using the circle as a scratching post. With limited success, there's even a guard appointed. He's not a soldier. More like a quiet old man in a linen robe who sits beside the tree all day muttering to ants. His official title is Keeper of the Grove, though most call him Olive Grandpa. No one really knows his name, but he knows everyone's, especially the donkeys. He has an uncanny ability to appear just as someone is about to do something unwise, like pick too many olives or suggest painting the bark gold. He doesn't shout. He just appears, looks, blinks slowly, and people stop. Because by now, the tree feels sacred. Not just because of Athena, but because of what it's become. A place of calm. A living reminder that something planted with intention can grow into something bigger than anyone expected. You walk past the tree at dusk, the light turning bronze across the stone wall. The wind makes the leaves hiss gently. A lantern flickers nearby. Anaxagoras is curled beneath the trunk, legs folded, nose twitching in a dream. Someone has left an offering on the edge of the stone ring, a single olive, a folded scrap of poetry, and a bit of woven cloth shaped like an owl. You don't know who left it, but it fits. Because this isn't just a tree anymore, it's a center, a landmark, a quiet pulse in the heart of a city that's beginning to find itself. And as the stars begin to blink into the sky overhead, you smile. Because somehow, a goddess's tree and a donkey with no sense of personal space have helped turn a bare hill into a home. The next morning, everything smells like oil. Not in a bad way. In a warm, comforting. Your neighbor is pressing olives again, and your tunic is about to absorb the scent for the rest of the week kind of way. The kind that tells you life is happening slowly, steadily, one squeeze at a time. You wake up to the distant clomp-clomp of hooves on stone, followed by an unmistakable bray. Anaxagoras is already doing his rounds. Yes, his rounds. You're not sure how it started, but somewhere along the way, the donkey began walking a loop through the neighborhood every morning, just once. He pauses in front of the bakery, sniffs the air, gets a crust of bread from the baker's assistant, moves on. He stops at the fountain, drinks deeply, then walks back toward the sacred olive tree, where he settles for the rest of the day. Ritual. That's what this is now. Ritual. Disguised as routine. The olive tree has begun giving more fruit, and the citizens are finally mastering the art of pressing the oil. It's no longer bitter and acrid. Now it's golden, smooth, deeply fragrant. They store it in large amphorae with pointed bottoms and wrap the necks with cloth to keep dust and insects out. You help sometimes. Not because you're good at it, your hands are clumsy, And you once dropped an entire bucket into the canal, but because the work is strangely soothing. Scoop, pour, press, collect. The rhythm is satisfying. And when the oil drips into the basin below, warm and golden, it's hard not to feel like the gods are nodding in quiet approval. One of the elders, a woman named Mura with arms like tree branches and a voice like thunder, begins offering lessons in oil use. Not just for food, but for skin, for lamps, for soothing aches. She claims that olive oil applied properly can cure heartbreak. You ask her to define properly, and she only raises an eyebrow and mutters something about the full moon. You don't ask again. The city's relationship with oil deepens. Every household has a stash now. Every cook has their own secret infusion garlic. Rosemary, pepper flakes, crushed bay leaves. There are contests for the best blend. There are debates over which olive is superior. There are long, slow dinners where people dip hunks of bread into shallow bowls of oil and argue about theater, oracles, and which goat in town has the most expressive eyes. Even the temples get involved. One priest proposes that Athena's statue should be anointed weekly in oil from the original tree. A new rite is invented. Every seventh day, a procession walks from the sacred tree to the temple, carrying a small jar cradled in cloth. The priest blesses it. The citizens cheer. Someone always cries. It becomes a spectacle. Anaxagoras, ever on brand, walks with the parade exactly once. He is showered in flower petals, fed far too many treats, and promptly develops indigestion so severe the temple has to temporarily suspend incense use. After that, he watches the processions from the shade. Still, he's revered. The children now call him the Olive Prophet. One particularly precocious boy starts a rumor that the donkey can predict olive yields based on which direction he lies under the tree. This leads to several days of frantic note-taking and one poorly received festival forecast. Historians still argue whether Athens' olive boom truly began here with one sacred tree and a very relaxed donkey, or if this is just mythology's way of explaining economics. Some believe the story of Athena's olive gift was later exaggerated to justify monopolies, land laws, and export policies. Others insist the roots, literal and figurative, go all the way back to that very first planting. But you're watching the people live it, not from scrolls or temples, but in tiny moments, a girl braiding olive leaves into her sister's hair, a man rubbing oil into a cracked spear handle, a baker wiping his hands and sighing happily as the evening breeze cools the ovens, and, of course, Anaxagoras, sprawled on his side beneath the tree, a garland sliding down one ear, snoring gently. Someone sets down a bowl of oil beside him infused with thyme this time, for his joints. He doesn't open his eyes, but he does wag his tail once in acknowledgement. And just like that, the olive becomes not just a gift, it becomes a language, a way to greet, to nourish, to bless, to remember, and maybe, in its own subtle golden way, to love. Poseidon is still not over it. You find this out the hard way. Of course, because when gods sulk, they don't do it quietly. They don't sit in a corner and mutter passive-aggressively into their goblets. They stir oceans. They shake coastline. They send dramatic messages via thunderclouds shaped like disapproving eyebrows. It starts one morning, just as the city is preparing for the annual festival of the first press, a charming, olive-themed celebration involving dancing, bread, and a chorus of elderly women singing ballads about the healing power of lamp oil. But then the sea begins to hiss. The sky darkens at the edges. And someone claims they heard the sacred donkey sneeze and mutter something that sounded like he's coming. A storm rolls in, not overhead, but from the harbor. Unseasonal waves, crashing with a little too much ambition. Boats tossed like toys, nets tangled, anchors pulled loose by currents that move as if grumbling. Everyone knows what this is. Poseidon. He's not going to flood the city. No, that would be excessive, even for him. But he's going to make things inconvenient. The festival shipments of wine are delayed, the shipment of ceremonial figs soaked, the choir trapped in a coastal tavern with only one functioning lyre. People mutter. Someone places an offering at the edge of the salt spring. Poseidon had gifted them long ago, the one that still gurgles near the city square. Mostly ignored except by local children who enjoy daring each other to taste it. They always regret it. They leave a bundle of olives, some silver coins, and a note. Dear Poseidon, we appreciate your spring. It is very salty. Please accept this olive tapenade and do not destroy our docks. Love, Athens. It works. Sort of. The waves calm slightly. The clouds thin. A gull poops on the temple roof, which is either a curse or a divine shrug. Historians still argue whether Poseidon's mythic mood swings were based on real coastal disasters or simply metaphorical reminders of political tensions between maritime trade and agricultural innovation, the sea versus the land, the wave versus the root. But for the average Athenian, it's just weather with a personality. You spend the rest of the day repairing market stalls and helping gather spilled jars. The olive tree. Unbothered, its branches sway gently. Olive still clinging. Anaxagoras still snoozing with the practiced focus of a professional. A new ritual emerges quiet, subtle, possibly born from panic. Every month, someone leaves a tiny cup of oil beside Poseidon's spring. It's never acknowledged. No thanks. No signs. But the sea doesn't stir as fiercely after that. Balance, perhaps? Athena and Poseidon no longer in contest, but in quiet co-governance. Each with their domain, each with their rituals, each with the people learning how to please both without upsetting either. You light a small oil lamp that evening, just a little bowl. One wick, warm and flickering. The scent of pressed olives fills your room. Outside, the wind settles. The reeds stop shaking. Even the frogs seem to pause mid-croak. And in the stillness, you think maybe this is what peace looks like. Not triumph, not conquest, but a meal shared. A flame kept, and a sea soothed with oil and intention. Anaxagoras, true to form, sneezes loudly in the distance. You blow out the lamp and smile. Athens has a name now, a tree, a goddess, a mildly famous donkey. But more than that, it has a shape. Not the kind you draw on a map, but the kind you feel in your feet when you walk it. The way streets curve naturally around the sacred olive tree, as if the city is growing with it, not in spite of it. Markets spring up nearby, stalls sell pressed oil, cured olives, carved wooden owls. There's even a man charging people to touch the original tree's shadow. Spoiler, it's free. The shadow is everywhere. You wake early and walk the familiar path to the tree, your sandals flapping against worn stone. Already, people are gathered. Not in crowds, just quietly present. A woman is weaving a wreath of olive branches. Two children play at being Athena and Poseidon, each with a stick and a very confused chicken. A young man reads poetry aloud to no one in particular, except maybe the tree. Anaxagoras, of course, is sprawled nearby, one leg twitching in a dream. A bit of vine caught in his mane. Someone has tied a blue ribbon to his tail. He either hasn't noticed or has decided not to care. You sit and watch as the city wakes around you. It's not perfect. No city is but it feels alive in a way that cities often forget how to be. People greet each other here, not with perfunctory nods, but with long, slow waves and gentle questions. How is your oil this season? Has your son stopped eating unripe olives yet? Did you hear the donkey try to eat a scroll yesterday? That last one is true. The scroll was a copy of a play. The donkey was unimpressed. The olive tree, meanwhile, continues to grow. Its branches are stronger now. Its roots reach deeper. Birds nest in it. Bees hum through it. Its leaves rustle even when the wind is still, as if the tree remembers something it wants to tell you but hasn't quite found the words yet. A priestess arrives with a small basket. Inside, a handful of olives, a cracked egg, a clay token with Athena's owl carved into it. She lays them at the base of the tree, whispers something too softly to hear, then departs. Ritual, again. Small, personal, undemanding. A gift, not a request. Historians still puzzle over how exactly Athens became so associated with the olive. Was it religious, economic, symbolic? Did Athena truly care? Or did the people simply need something to believe in? And the tree was there, steady and generous. But you don't need to solve that puzzle today. Because here's what you do know. A tree was planted. A city grew around it. People began to live not just near each other, but with each other. And the olive tree became a kind of center, not just for food or trade, but for pause. It became the place where people brought their thoughts, their thank yous, their worries, where feet slowed and voices softened, and the breeze, no matter how faint, always seemed to find you. Someone nearby begins plucking olives from the lower branches, gently, with reverence. They place each one in a cloth-lined basket, humming softly under their breath. You watch them move, and it's like watching music without sound. Anaxagoras lifts his head, sniffs, then settles again, sighing so deeply you feel it in your own chest. You lean against the smooth curve of the tree's trunk and let your thoughts wander. You think of salt springs and oil presses, of gods who argue and mortals who vote, of sun-warmed stone and the exact weight of a ripe olive in your palm. And you think of a city can form around something so quiet, so unassuming. Then maybe peace doesn't have to shout either. Maybe it just has to be planted, tended, allowed to grow. You're walking past the agora one breezy afternoon, listening to the familiar sound of sandals on stone, arguments over olive prices, and someone trying to convince a turtle to move faster, when you notice a new statue near the sacred olive tree. It's a donkey. Or it's supposed to be a donkey. Let's be honest, whoever carved it had clearly never seen a donkey before. Or if they had, they'd only caught a fleeting glimpse of one falling down a hill. The ears are different lengths. The eyes look suspiciously like grapes. The body has the general shape of a melted amphora. And somehow, the statue appears both surprised and deeply disapproving. The crowd, of course, loves it. Anaxagoras, the real donkey, is standing nearby in his usual patch of shade. He glances at the statue once, blinks slowly, then continues chewing on a fig leaf someone left as an offering. He has no interest in being immortalized. He's more concerned with which part of the ground is warmest this hour. The plaque at the base of the statue reads, "In honor of Anaxagoras, guardian of the olive, sleeper of shade, brayer of truth." It's ridiculous. It's perfect. Kids climb on it. Philosophers pose dramatically beside it. A traveling bard sings a song about how the donkey's bray once stopped an invasion, which you're pretty sure never happened, but everyone claps anyway. And just like that, the donkey becomes legend. Not just a legend of the city, but a symbol of it. Because here in Athens, greatness doesn't always arrive with armor and lightning. Sometimes it shows up on 4 stubby legs, finds the nicest patch of grass, and refuses to move for the next 20 years. A group of elders gather near the tree that afternoon, arguing softly about whether the statue should face north, south, or toward destiny. No one agrees on what direction that is. A child tugs on your tunic and asks, "Do you think the donkey knows he's famous?" You think about it, Anaxagoras is currently trying to scratch his ear with a back hoof and falling over slowly in the process. No, you say. And that might be the secret. Meanwhile, a potter begins making little clay replicas of the donkey statue. Within a week, every household has at least one. Some are painted, some have tiny wreaths. One family glues actual olive pits to theirs and insists it brings luck during storms. Historians still debate the authenticity of the donkey legend. Some scrolls dismiss it entirely. Others treat Anaxagoras as a sacred animal on par with Egyptian cats or Roman eagles. A particularly poetic scholar once wrote that the donkey represents the stillness required for wisdom to grow. Another simply wrote, "He was very round." You stroll through the city that evening as the sun slides behind the Acropolis. The streets glow amber. Oil lamps flicker to life one by one. And there, beneath the tree that started it all, Anaxagoras snoozes beside his statue, both of them outlined in gold. Someone places a bowl of olives beside the sculpture. Someone else ties a ribbon around the real donkey's neck. And for a brief moment, they look almost the same. You sit on the low wall near the roots of the tree and close your eyes. You don't need words. The story has already planted itself in the city's stones, its songs, its shadows, and tonight, like every night, the tree stands tall, the donkey lies still, and Athens remembers. Section 10. The Olive and the Echo. Weeks pass, or maybe months. Time in Athens is slippery like oil on marble, sometimes slow, sometimes sudden, but always swirling around the same stories. And Anaxagoras, as always, remains at the center of one. Not because he moves, he doesn't. In fact, if he were any more still, you'd suspect he'd turn to stone himself. But that's the thing, the city moves around him. Children now leave small offerings beside the statue before taking exams. Couples rub its oddly shaped nose for luck. Soldiers brush its hooves before marching out. One ambitious merchant even starts selling donkey wisdom scrolls, which are mostly blank except for a single word: nap. Anaxagoras, the real one, seems unaffected by the growing myth. He continues his daily routine wake. Blink, chew, nap. Blink again like time itself takes its cues from him. Then one morning, something changes. You arrive at the agora earlier than usual. The air is crisp. The market stall's still half asleep, and the statue is gone. At first, you think it's a trick of the light. But no, there's just an empty patch of stone where the donkey once stood. The wreath still lying on the ground. The plaque abandoned in the dust. No one saw who took it. Or why. Some say a rival city stole it to steal Athens' luck. Others say the gods reclaimed it. A potter claims he heard it bray at midnight and walk away on its own. Searching for deeper shade? Most don't believe him. But the strangest thing is this: people still gather around the empty space. Children still leave olives. The bard still sings. Tourists still pose where the statue once was, smiling beside the absence. And Anaxagoras. He's still there, right where he always is, chewing, blinking, occasionally attempting to sit like a philosopher and failing. The legend hasn't faded, it's just grown quieter, deeper. And maybe that's the point. Maybe stories don't live in stone. Maybe they live in the spaces left behind. In the pause between one step and the next. In the hush before the agora wakes. In the silence beneath the olive tree. One evening, as stars blink open overhead, you sit beside the donkey again. He doesn't look at you. Doesn't need to. You both understand. The statue is gone, but the stillness remains. And in Athens, that's more than enough. It happens on an ordinary morning. The kind of morning where the sun yawns a little slower, and the olives glisten as if polished by the gods overnight. The market is already buzzing. A philosopher is passionately arguing with a chicken. A baker's boy is asleep inside a basket of bread. And somewhere in the distance, a flute plays off-key but with conviction. You're sipping watered wine, half listening to a lecture on the virtues of cabbage, when a murmur stirs the crowd like wind through reeds. It begins as disbelief, then spreads like fire. The donkey moved. Someone says, "You laugh." Of course he didn't. Anaxagoras hasn't moved since the last solstice. Probably before that. He once stood in a rainstorm so long that moss tried to claim him. But then you hear it again. Louder. Closer. The donkey moved. You stand. So does everyone else. And you see it. Anaxagoras is not in his usual spot. He is somehow halfway across the agora. Not trotting, not running, just walking slowly, steadily, like someone late for an appointment with eternity. The crowd parts, jaws drop, a few people cheer, one faints. He walks past the olive tree, past the empty pedestal, past the stunned elders and the bard who drops his lute in shock. He walks to the very center of the agora, where the stones are oldest and smoothest, worn down by speeches, arguments, protests, and dances, and there, in front of the entire city, Anaxagoras stops and sits. The entire city holds its breath. A dog barks once, then thinks better of it. Anaxagoras blinks once, twice, and sneezes loudly enough to scare 3 pigeons into the sky. No one moves. Then, slowly, the potter who made the first donkey figurine steps forward. He kneels, places a tiny clay offering at Anaxagoras' feet. Someone else follows. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the ground around the donkey is filled with wreaths, scrolls, olives, figs, even coins and carved stones. A child lays a ribbon across his back. A farmer bows. A scholar weeps openly into a scroll. Because the message is clear, the statue is gone. But the donkey, the real donkey, has taken its place. Not as a joke, not as a mascot, but as a quiet, breathing monument to everything Athens values. Stubbornness, stillness, simplicity, and unexpected wisdom. You find yourself walking up to him, unsure why. Maybe just to be near whatever just happened. Anaxagoras doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. But this time, you swear just for a moment he smiles. You don't know how long you stand there, near the center of the agora, watching the donkey breathe. Someone coughs softly. A sandal scuffs against stone. A jar clinks. Life doesn't stop just because something sacred happens. But it does, sometimes. Slow down, just enough to notice. Anaxagoras remains perfectly still. He isn't performing. He isn't basking in the attention. He isn't doing anything at all, really. And that mysteriously, somehow is the point. By mid-morning, the space around him has changed. The city, still rubbing the sleep from its eyes, begins to flow differently. Market stalls shift. Vendors lower their voices. One fruit seller, usually known for his dramatic shouting, begins whispering prices as though he's in a temple. His customers follow suit, not out of reverence, just because it feels right. The philosopher who had been arguing with the chicken earlier now sits cross-legged a few paces away from Anaxagoras. He's writing furiously on a wax tablet, glancing up every so often to observe the donkey's posture. He's modeling poise. He murmurs, "You raise an eyebrow." He's napping. The philosopher nods solemnly. Precisely. By noon, an impromptu shrine has taken shape. Nothing formal, nothing declared. But someone has built a tiny ring of pebbles around the donkey's sitting spot. Someone else draped a small garland of laurel around one ear. Anaxagoras shook it off immediately, but it now lies reverently nearby, as if blessed by rejection. People stop by not to pray, exactly, but to reflect, or say thank you, or just sit. There's a man who brings a flute and plays one soft note every few minutes. There's a woman who knits while watching the donkey like she's waiting for him to offer her color palette advice. Children come by after lessons, placing scribbled notes or misshapen olives near his hooves and giggling when he twitches in his sleep. And above it all, the olive tree sways. It has grown tall now, taller than any of the surrounding rooftops. Its bark is deeply grooved, its canopy dense, its fruit fat and heavy with promise. The light through the branches flickers across Anaxagoras like a god's lazy spotlight. The air hums with bees and murmurs, and it's then, at the height of the quiet, that someone new arrives. A woman, not flashy, not dramatic, but the crowd shifts when she steps forward. You recognize her vaguely. She's not local, but her presence carries weight. A priestess, you think? Of Athena, judging by the silver-threaded owl embroidery on her hem and the way her sandals look like they've never touched mud. She does not bow. She does not speak. She simply sits, cross-legged beside the donkey. The people watch, unsure whether to intervene, applaud, or just keep breathing normally. Anaxagoras opens one eye, looks at her, sniffs, then lays his head on her lap. She does not flinch. She places a hand gently on his ear and begins to hum. A lullaby, maybe, or a hymn. Soft, slow, full of dust and time. The agora, usually a space of buying and selling and shouting and scurrying, becomes just for that moment a space of listening. The priestess remains for hours, occasionally feeding Anaxagoras a fig or brushing the dust from his mane. No ceremony, no incense, just presence. Later, someone carves a tiny owl into the stone nearest the donkey's spot. It's crude, likely done with a spoon or maybe an old key, but the shape is unmistakable. A sign, a seal, a little blessing carved where words fall short. A week passes. The shrine becomes semi-official. A modest awning is erected to protect Anaxagoras from the worst of the sun, though he seems indifferent to it. A low wall encircles his sitting area, now jokingly referred to as the center of donkey gravity. Someone donates a mosaic depicting him, surprisingly accurate except for the wildly exaggerated eyelashes. He becomes a destination, not a temple, not exactly sacred, just the place people go when they need something to make sense. A man whose wife has gone off with a visiting flute maker sits there for hours, staring at the way the donkey blinks. A woman trying to remember her father's favorite olive blend brings a bowl of oil and pours it slowly onto the ground beside him. A boy with too many questions and not enough answers brings a list. Anaxagoras eats it, and somehow that helps. Historians still argue whether this phase marked the peak of the donkey's cult status, or merely a humorous footnote in Athenian religious development. Some argue it reflects a deep need among mortals for accessible divine symbols. Others claim it was simply a city going through a weird phase involving collective grief and seasonal allergies. But for those who were there, it was real. You saw it in the eyes of the people, in the way the agora adapted, the way the songs changed, in the way philosophers began referring to Anaxagoran patience and the donkey principle, which, to be honest, mostly involved sitting very still and rejecting any and all questions. And perhaps the most curious change, a new greeting begins circulating. Instead of share, the usual rejoice, people begin nodding to each other and saying shade and stillness. It catches on. It spreads. And it lasts. Because Anaxagoras, in his sleepy wisdom, had offered Athens something no god, no hero, no oracle had managed so effortlessly a moment of quiet. A reminder that even in a city of ambition and brilliance, you're allowed, perhaps even encouraged, to stop, to rest, to nap under a tree and contribute nothing but your continued presence, and maybe, in doing so, to become part of something larger than myth, something human, something home. The seasons begin to turn. Not dramatically, this isn't a city of blizzards or firestorms, but in the way the wind carries new smells and the stones underfoot change temperature. The olives ripen darker, the shadows stretch longer, and Anaxagoras, unfazed by meteorological nuance, begins his slow seasonal migration 2 feet to the left, seeking maximum shade coverage. You've started keeping track. Not officially, of course, no scrolls, no charts. But you've noticed the donkey's instincts are uncanny. He knows the precise moment to reposition. You joke that he's secretly consulting the stars. A nearby astronomer hears this and immediately begins a side project titled Celestial Donkey Mechanics, which involves far too much trigonometry and one very uncooperative subject. Meanwhile, the agora adjusts again. A new stall appears selling donkey-shaped bread. Another begins offering small jars labeled Shade Essence infused with quiet. Someone knits another reed hat, this one reinforced with olive twine. Anaxagoras does not wear it, but it's displayed on a small stand next to his spot. Like a ceremonial crown, he graciously declined. And then one morning, a scroll arrives, hand-delivered, sealed with dark wax. The seal bears a crest you don't recognize at first, a twisting serpent and a lyre. Delphi. You whisper it under your breath, and half the square falls silent. The oracle has spoken. Well, not spoken yet, but summoned. A representative, at least. A priestess named Ione, with eyes like cracked marble and a voice that seems to echo before she speaks. She stands before the olive tree, nods once to it, once to Anaxagoras, and then delivers her message. The oracle wishes to meet the donkey. The silence is immediate and complete. Even Anaxagoras pauses mid-chew. At first, everyone assumes it's a metaphor. The oracle often speaks in riddles. Maybe the donkey refers to a constellation, or a politician, or something deeply metaphorical about the stubbornness of truth in a chaotic world. But no. Ione clarifies the actual donkey, the one sleeping under the actual tree. She gestures to Anaxagoras, who blinks at her with the slow disinterest of someone who has been offered both too much fame and too little fruit. A chariot will be provided, she adds. This is met with nervous laughter, because moving the donkey, that's madness. He hasn't left the agora in years. He hasn't even shown interest in leaving the shadow of the tree. He once took 3 full hours to move around a fallen olive basket. But Delphi is Delphi. You find yourself among the newly formed Committee for Donkey Travel Logistics, debating things like chariot suspension, snack pacing, and whether divine animals are allowed breaks. The solution is elaborate. A custom cart is built wide, cushioned, shaded, lined with fig leaves and woven cloth bearing owl motifs. The wheels are blessed. The road is swept. And still, Anaxagoras shows no intention of cooperating. Until a child small, freckled, fearless walks up to him, offers a single olive from the tree, and whispers something in his ear. The donkey stands, just like that. He steps into the cart with the calm authority of a seasoned diplomat and settles in as though he's been planning this journey for years. The crowd erupts. People line the streets. Petals are thrown. Bread is shared. The mayor weeps openly. Clutching a scroll of donkey-inspired aphorisms he swears he didn't just write the night before. The procession begins. Athens to Delphi is no easy trip. The road winds through valleys and rises over cliffs. The sea glints in the distance, and flocks of birds move like secrets above your heads. The donkey, for his part, is unimpressed. He naps, he eats, he occasionally brays with mild judgment at particularly bumpy stretches. At night, the caravan stops in small towns. Word has spread ahead of you, and people gather with offerings, oil, fruit, carved wooden owls, and one enthusiastic bard who performs an entire ballad about a dream he had where the donkey solved a murder. Anaxagoras eats half the sheet music and sleeps through the rest. Finally, after days of slow, sun-drenched travel, you arrive at Delphi. The cliffs rise like marble teeth. The temples gleam in the high light. The air feels thinner, quieter, like it's waiting. You lead the donkey up the sacred path. Pilgrims part for you. Priests stare. The smell of smoke and time fills your lungs. At the top, beneath the ancient omphalos, the stone navel of the world, the oracle waits. She is young. Younger than you expected. But her eyes are centuries old. She does not smile. She does not speak. She only gestures for the donkey. And Anaxagoras, tired but dignified, steps forward. The moment stretches. The wind stills. The birds stop. And then the oracle begins to laugh. Not cruelly, not mockingly, but fully, deeply, like someone who's just remembered the punchline to a joke told at the beginning of the universe. She kneels, places her hand on the donkey's head, and whispers something. No one hears it, except maybe him. He sneezes once, shakes his head, and then without being prompted turns and begins walking back down the path. Just like that. The oracle stands, watching him go. She turns to the gathered crowd, now hushed in reverence, and finally speaks. He knows. That's all. Historians still argue what it meant. Some say the donkey was an avatar of divine humility. Others think he was a test, a riddle, a mirror held up to the city to see how it treats the unremarkable. A few fringe theorists insist he was never a donkey at all, but Athena in disguise. Checking in, but you walk beside him down the mountain path. The air sweet with laurel and dust, and you feel no need to explain anything. Some truths don't ask to be solved. They just ask to be walked beside. By the time you return to Athens, the city feels different. Not changed in the way a city changes after war or disaster, but in the subtle, breath-deep way a room feels different after someone finally says what everyone was too afraid to admit. The streets are the same. The market still smells like figs and ambition. The sun still hits the Acropolis just so. But there's a hush beneath the noise now. A note of something new in the old chorus of life. Word has spread, of course, faster than your cart? Faster than logic? Probably. By the time Anaxagoras clops into view, flanked by flower throwers and two particularly unhelpful flutists, the city is ready. A procession meets him. A feast has been prepared. Children wear paper donkey ears. Olive-shaped lanterns swing from doorways. Even the mayor has taken the liberty of drafting a new civic holiday. The day of knowing a title everyone agrees is appropriately vague and vaguely important. Anaxagoras, for his part, walks straight past the celebration and settles under the olive tree. Of course, someone has placed a woven mat there in anticipation. He ignores it and flops onto the bare dirt as usual. Limbs askew, eyelids already drifting down like stage curtains after a one-animal show. And you freshly dusted with road dirt and introspection sit beside him. Not too close. Just enough. Enough to feel the shade, the breath of breeze. The sense that whatever just happened on that mountain wasn't the end of the story. Just an echo. Life resumes. The city shifts back into its usual rhythms, though now with a few new quirks. First, a new fashion trend. Donkey-shaped brooches, tunics embroidered with hooves, even a brief, mercifully short-lived sandal style designed to mimic donkey tracks in the dust. A potter begins selling figurines of Anaxagoras in every conceivable pose, including one where he's mid-sneeze and inexplicably wearing a cape. Second philosophy changes. Slightly, quietly. You begin hearing a new phrase tossed around symposiums, Prouties apogon and the still offspring of gentleness. It's used to describe insight that comes not from force or frenzy, but from quiet, passive presence, a kind of wisdom without urgency. The sort a donkey might embody if you watched him long enough and squinted. Third, dreams. You begin hearing stories. People, dozens, maybe hundreds, start reporting dreams where they're visited by a donkey. Sometimes he speaks. Sometimes he simply stares. One woman claims he guided her through a labyrinth made of laundry. A boy swears Anaxagoras taught him how to bake olives, which shouldn't be a thing, but somehow is now. A philosopher tearfully confesses he dreamed the donkey told him to forgive his brother. A temple scribe notes all these reports on a scroll labeled Visitations of the Hooved One, and immediately regrets the title but is too embarrassed to change it. Of course, there are skeptics. Some say the donkey's fame has gone too far, that the city's reverence for him risk crossing into sacrilege or absurdity, that this is how cults form slowly, quietly, with too many fig offerings and not enough critical thinking. A council is convened. Debates are held. One priest suggests gently relocating Anaxagoras to a more controlled environment. That suggestion is not popular. Within hours, the entire agora fills with citizens wearing olive wreaths and donkey ears, chanting, "Let him nap," with the sort of chaotic passion usually reserved for tax revolts or new amphitheaters. The priest retracts his suggestion, and the donkey continues to sleep. Still, the city takes a breath. It realizes quietly, slowly, that it must strike a balance. So they do something rare: they build less. No marble temple, no shrine, no golden cart with inlaid hooves. Instead, they plant. All around the agora, around the sacred tree and Anaxagoras' resting spot, they plant olive saplings, cuttings from the original tree, spaced evenly, watered daily, each one marked not with a plaque, but with a single small stone, etched only with the date it was planted, and beside each a bench, not for worship, for sitting, for watching, for remembering that not all wisdom comes in thunderbolts. Some arrives on 4 dusty legs, chews loudly, and sneezes on your scroll. One afternoon, as the light drips golden down the walls of the city, you see a woman sitting on one of these benches. She's not praying. She's not meditating. She's just breathing. Eyes closed, shoulders relaxed. A half-eaten olive in her hand, and near her feet, the slow shuffle of hooves. Anaxagoras. He pauses beside her, nudges her calf gently. She opens her eyes, smiles, and together, for a moment, they sit, side by side. Donkey and dreamer, wisdom and witness. The slow, quiet miracle of simply being present. Historians still argue about the donkey dreams. Some claim mass delusion. Others blame fermented olives. A few propose a mysterious gas leak near the bakery district. But a rare handful, usually the oldest, the least impressed by scrolls or awards, just nod and say, "The donkey came to me, too." You hear the stories now and then. At festivals. In alleyways. Scribbled on the backs of amphora labels. You stop trying to make sense of them. Because the point was never logic. It was pause. It was the olive tree. And the donkey beneath it. And the silence in between. You start to notice it in small things. The way conversations slow near the tree. The way merchants take just a breath longer before haggling. How children instinctively lower their voices when they pass Anaxagoras, as if not to wake him, though he's clearly awake. Eyes half-lidded in that perpetual donkey state of "I see you." I'm just choosing not to react. There's a rhythm to the city now. A gentler one. A rhythm not dictated by bells or clocks or the sound of amphorae clanging in the marketplace, but by shade, wind, and hooves. You don't know when exactly it shifted. Maybe when he returned from Delphi. Maybe before. Maybe the day the statue disappeared and people started treating the absence as presence. The agora itself begins to reshape. Not in dramatic ways. No grand redesign. But paths subtly curve around the donkey's favored routes. Benches multiply in shady spots. A new law is passed quietly, with little fanfare limiting noise near the sacred olive tree during napping hours. Officially from noon to 3, though Anaxagoras has been known to override the schedule. And then, inevitably, it happens. A bard writes a play. It's called The Stillness Beneath the Hoof. It's terrible. Earnest, but terrible. 5 acts. 17 monologues. 2 musical interludes. One of which features the man in a full donkey costume attempting to sing a duet with a fig. You attend opening night. You leave halfway through the second act, as does most of the audience, including the actor playing the fig. Still, the idea has legs. A week later, a better troupe stages a simpler version in the open square. No fig, no ballads. Just a gentle story of a city. A tree. And the donkey who taught them to stop running for no reason. This one resonates. And so it begins. The Festival of the Donkey. Not official. Not state-sponsored. But real. Held on the longest day of the year. When the sun is strongest and the shade of the olive tree stretches longest. It's not a loud celebration. There are no parades, no sacrifices, no demands. People bring blankets. They bring olives, bread, wine. They sit. They nap. They write poems in silence and then don't read them aloud. Children draw donkeys in the dust. Teenagers dare each other to pluck a leaf they never do. A few older citizens sit beside the tree, not speaking, just being like rocks that remember. Anaxagoras, naturally, is asleep for the entire thing. You think that's the point? But even outside of festivals, the donkey's influence continues to ripple. Art changes. Murals begin appearing on alley walls, not of gods, not of battles, but of donkeys, always in repose. Sometimes with olives, sometimes with the city skyline behind them. One clever sculptor carves a small statue of Anaxagoras lying on his side. a scroll under one hoof. He titles it Wisdom in No Hurry. The Academy buys it within the hour and places it near the entrance, replacing an old bust of a general no one liked anyway. Even speech begins to change. New idioms appear. He's chasing olives becomes shorthand for someone stressing over things that will ripen in their own time. Let the donkey nap is the preferred way to tell someone to leave well enough alone. Still, as Anaxagoras replaces calm as a pond in most romantic poetry, leading to some extremely weird metaphors involving hooves and longing. One day, you're walking through the market when you hear a father whisper to his daughter, who's pouting over a broken toy shade returns. Always. She nods. You keep walking. That night, the air feels different. Not colder, not warmer, more awake. You lie beneath the sacred olive tree, your hands behind your head, and stare up into the branches. The stars wink through the leaves. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a soft, meandering tune. It isn't perfect. The notes wobble, the rhythm falters, but that makes it better. Closer, more honest. Anaxagoras is nearby, of course, curled in a crooked sea tail, twitching slightly in a dream. Someone's draped a blanket over him. He hasn't noticed. Or, if he has, he's decided not to acknowledge it. You think of all the things he's seen. Of Athena, planting the tree. Of Poseidon, huffing in the background like a disappointed sea uncle. Of the vote, the statue, the disappearance. Of the way people have woven him into their stories like a thread that doesn't shout for attention, but holds the whole tapestry together. Historians still argue, must of course. Some now say there was never one donkey, but a succession. A clever line of animals trained to behave identically. Others believe Anaxagoras was a title, not a name passed down like a crown made of hay. A few suggest he wasn't a donkey at all, but a metaphor invented by playwrights who were tired of writing about wars. But Athens remembers, not in scrolls, not in statues, but in the way it breathes, in the quiet corners, the shaded spots, the benches with perfect views of the olive leaves flickering silver in the wind. You close your eyes, and you think not of gods or battles or deadlines, but of the hush that follows laughter, the calm after the applause, the space between footsteps on a worn stone path. A donkey snores softly, a leaf falls, and the night says nothing at all, because it doesn't need to. The donkey lives for years after that, longer than anyone expects. Long enough that people stop asking how old is he and start saying, he's always been here, which is, in Athens, basically the same thing as being immortal. He moves less now, not in a worrying way, more in the way mountains don't bother shifting unless they have something extremely important to say. His routine is slow, deliberate. Mornings under the olive tree, afternoons beside the little fountain, evenings near the western wall, where the sun pools low and the stones hold warmth like quiet promises. Someone eventually builds him a small shelter. Not a stable, no walls, no door, nothing to trap or contain. Just a canopy of woven reeds supported by carved wooden beams, decorated with simple olive motifs. It sits just beyond the shade of the sacred tree, an offering, not a cage, a suggestion. The donkey accepts it, though he mostly uses it to scratch his side and shed fur in decorative tufts. And then one morning, you wake to a strange sound. Not the usual clatter of carts or the mutter of philosophers. Not the distant singing of bakers or the flutter of pigeons arguing over breadcrumbs. It's laughter. Real laughter. Loud and startled and contagious. You stumble outside and find the agora full of people, pointing at Anaxagoras, who is walking, Not just shifting slightly or rotating for the sun, but actually walking with purpose. He trots not fast, but faster than anyone's seen in years across the square. Past the statue of the owl, past the olive garland shop, past the corner where the potter throws clay while singing off key. He stops at the base of a half-built column and bites it. Not hard, just a test nibble. Then he turns and wanders off again, completely unbothered by the chaos he's left behind. Within the hour, that column is declared unsound and torn down by order of the city planners. Everyone now assumes the donkey can detect architectural flaws. This becomes a problem. Suddenly, builders begin inviting him to construction sites. They leave out olives and flower crowns in exchange for consultations. One crew places an amphora of oil beside their scaffolding and prays aloud. "We hope it's straight, but if not, please bray twice." Anaxagoras, to his credit, ignores all of it. He resumes his usual routine, punctuated now by occasional walks that seem random, but always lead him somewhere interesting. A quiet street, a family dinner. Once the Senate chamber mid-debate, where he walked in, sneezed, and lay down between two arguing senators, effectively ending the session. Divine intervention, they said. Better than the usual shouting. Someone else muttered. He becomes not just a symbol now, but a presence. A quiet guardian. Not a god. Not even close. But something else. A reminder that wisdom doesn't always look like thunder and marble. Sometimes it looks like a dusty, slow-moving creature who knows exactly where the best shade is and doesn't mind sitting in it alone until the rest of the world catches up. Children grow up learning his story. They draw pictures of him in school. They practice donkey stillness during festivals. One temple even creates a series of meditative exercises called the braying path, which involves lying very still for as long as possible while thinking about olives. Meanwhile, scholars continue their endless debates. One new theory suggests that Anaxagoras is a reincarnation of a pre-Olympian spirit older than the gods themselves. A creature from the earliest folds of myth, sent to remind mortals of something essential and easily forgotten. Another counters that he's simply a donkey, a well-loved one, certainly, but still donkey. A third group writes an extremely long scroll suggesting that it doesn't matter. And maybe it doesn't, because by now he's part of the city, woven into its rhythm like a chord so low and steady you don't hear it anymore. You feel it in your feet when you walk the agora. You start to wonder how the city will go on when he's gone. You don't speak it aloud. No one does. That's the rule. Don't speak of endings when the sun is out and the olives are ripening. Don't ask how long something good will last. Just notice it while it's here. Still, late one evening, you sit beside him and the tree, and ask quietly, "Will we know what to do without you?" Anaxagoras opens one eye, looks at you, and farts profoundly. You nod as if that's exactly the answer you expected. Because, in a way, it is. You stand, stretch. The stars are beginning to blink into the sky like soft applause after a very long performance. The tree shivers in the breeze. Somewhere a flute starts up again. Probably tuned better this time. You think about the years, the stories, the statue, the silence, and you realize something. He's already given the city everything it needs. Not commandments, not miracles, but pause, shade, a reason to sit still for 5 minutes and remember that you're alive. The tree grows taller, the donkey breathes, and the city continues, one soft hoofprint at a time. Autumn arrives like a slow exhale. The olive trees darken. The light becomes thicker, more golden, like someone spilled honey across the hills. The breeze shifts from playful to thoughtful. And in the agora, people start talking just a little more softly again, not because they have to, but because it feels right. Anaxagoras is older now. That's obvious. His coat is shaggier, his steps slower. He naps longer, and sometimes it takes him 2 tries to stand. But there's still that clarity in his eyes, that unbothered stillness, the sense that he's playing the long game while the rest of the city scrambles to meet deadlines the gods never wrote. The city has grown around him. Not just physically, though. There are certainly more streets now, more columns, more shops with names like Donkey and Fig and Oil and Oracle, but emotionally, culturally, people measure time by donkey events. The year he ate the tax records. The season he walked through the wedding and sneezed on the priest. The week he brayed during the philosopher's soliloquy and the entire crowd clapped. But there's an awareness now. A quiet recognition under the laughter. A feeling like the last pages of a scroll. They say nothing lives forever, but no one says that near the tree. The olive tree has changed too. It's vast now, with thick, twisting limbs that stretch wide enough to shade a dozen people. The roots run deep, deeper than the foundation of the neighboring shrine, maybe deeper than anyone realizes. During a particularly bad summer when most of the crops wilted and the water bearers grew weary, the sacred olive continued to bear fruit. Not much, but enough. That year, they called the oil miracle grade. No one sells it. They just pass it on quietly, in clay vials wrapped in linen, exchanged during hard conversations or placed beside sickbeds with no note. That's what the tree means now. Not just bounty, not just origin, but resilience. A few miles outside the city, farmers plant rows of olives descended from the sacred one. They build their homes to face east, so the first light of each morning hits the leaves. It's said the shine wards off regret. Back in Athens, people gather more frequently near the tree, not to gawk, not even to speak, but just to be. Some write letters they never send. Some knit in silence. Some lie flat on their backs, watching light flutter through branches. And always, somewhere nearby, is the donkey. One morning, a traveling painter from Corinth sets up an easel near the agora. She's young, intent, full of ambition and oils and the kind of focus that doesn't blink for hours. She paints the tree first every crease in the bark, every shimmer of silver green leaf. Then she adds the donkey. It takes her 3 days. When she's done, she steps back, squints, and frowns. The painting is beautiful, technically perfect, but wrong. It's too still, she mutters. A boy passing by snorts. It's a donkey. No, she says, staring at it. It's missing something. She returns the next day and spends another afternoon painting a soft shadow. Not under the donkey, but beside him. A second form. Indistinct. Gentle. Not quite man. Not quite God. When asked, she shrugs. He's not alone. That painting ends up in the Hall of Civic Memory, where tourists admire the brushwork and scholars debate the meaning of the shadow. Some call it the spirit of Athens. Others insist it's Athena. A few say it's just bad lighting. But the locals know. They've seen it too. Not often. Not clearly. But sometimes, in the corner of an eye or in the hush before sleep, they feel it's something standing beside the donkey. Or maybe within him. A presence. Old and quiet and deeply, deeply patient. The dreams continue. They're different now. Less vivid, quieter. Instead of visions, people report sensations being watched, being led, being told wordlessly to breathe. A few say they wake up with the taste of olives in their mouth. One woman says she dreamed of sitting beside the donkey for an hour, and when she woke up, Her fever had broken. The priestesses say nothing publicly, but they start walking past the tree more often. Some leave garlands, others bow. A few simply rest a hand against the trunk and whisper, "Thank you." One morning, Anaxagoras doesn't rise. At first, no one panics. He's old, he naps. They wait. The sun arcs high. The shadows stretch long, and still he lies curled, breathing softly, legs folded beneath him, ears twitching only slightly. By sunset, the tree is surrounded. Quietly, wordlessly, the city gathers, not in grief, not yet, but in recognition, in solidarity. Someone lights a lantern, then another. Soon, the entire grove glows with flickering points of light, like stars decided to come down for a better view. Children sit cross-legged. Philosophers go quiet. Even the owl in the rafters of the adjacent temple blinks twice and does not hoot. The donkey sleeps. The tree sways. And Athens waits. Because some endings aren't quick. They arrive like dusk. Softly. With time to say thank you. You return before dawn. You're not the only one. Quiet figures dot the paths leading to the agora, some wrapped in shawls, others carrying candles. One man awkwardly clutching a small lyre and unsure whether to play it. The sky is still bruised with night, but the horizon hints at orange, the soft promise of morning reaching tentatively into the dark. Anaxagoras hasn't moved. He's still curled beneath the olive tree, limbs tucked, breath shallow but steady. The space around him has been respectfully cleared, as if the entire city has agreed that now, in his final hours, if that's what this is, he should be given room to be exactly what he's always been still. There is no panic, no wailing, no fanfare, just presence, one by one. People arrive and sit, not in rows, not in any pattern, just wherever the ground invites them. Someone begins to hum, not a song, really, but a low, wordless thread of sound, like wind over the rim of a jug. It picks up in the chest, resonates softly in your bones. It becomes a vigil. A woman offers a blanket. Anaxagoras doesn't take it. A child places a fig near his hooves. He doesn't stir. A priest brings oil fresh pressed, clear and golden, and gently pours a few drops into the dust beside the donkey. A quiet offering returned to the earth. And then the wind shifts. A single leaf falls from the sacred olive tree. It twirls slowly, lazily, then lands on Anaxagoras' back. He doesn't flick it off. You watch his sides rise, fall, then stop. Not abruptly, just finish. As if the breath has gone where it needed to go. And now there's nowhere else it must be. No one moves. A full minute passes before anyone speaks. And even then it's a whisper. He's gone. But the hush that follows doesn't feel like grief. Not entirely, it feels like awe. Like the city just witnessed something immense. Someone begins to cry, not loudly, not even sadly. Just the kind of tears that come when your heart is too full to do anything else. Another person laughs gently through their tears. Of course he waited for sunrise. They murmur, dramatic to the end. Someone else adds, no, wise to the end. You sit with them, and slowly. As the sun begins to climb, the air warms. The light filters through the olive tree and dapples Anaxagoras' still body with flickering gold. The birds begin to sing, not a sudden chorus, just a few gentle notes here and there, as if testing whether it's okay to return to song. Then unexpectedly the bell rings. Not the city bell, not the temple one. The small bronze bell tied to the neck of a goat in the nearby market, Anaxagoras' old haunt. It chimes once, twice, 3 times. The goat has wandered near, chewing on a vine, entirely unaware of its accidental eulogy. And just like that, life begins to stir again. But the city doesn't rush to move him. No procession is planned. No grand tomb ordered. Instead, a group of citizens gather and, by unspoken agreement, begin preparing a place beneath the sacred tree. They do not dig deep, just enough. Enough to cradle him where he always belonged. Someone places fresh olive branches on the ground. Someone else lines it with soft cloth. An elder leans down and whispers, "You gave us more than you ever knew." Then, with care, they lift him. He's heavier than expected. Still warm. Still Anaxagoras. They lay him down in the shade one final time. Above him, the tree rustles not in grief, not in anger, but in recognition. The way one old friend might sigh when another finally sets down their burden. The city exhales. A marker is made, not a stone, not a statue, just a smooth ring of pebbles. A single line carved into the bark of the tree beside it. He stayed. That night, no one lights lamps near the tree. Instead, the stars are left to do the watching. And they do. They flicker brighter than usual. One seems to hover just above the tree, pulsing gently. A poet will later call it the donkey's star, and the name will stick. Astronomers will try to rename it after a statesman, but the people will continue calling it what it has always been. And eventually, the maps will follow suit. In the weeks that come, the agora adjusts. The empty space under the tree feels strange at first, like a word left out of a favorite sentence. But it fills, slowly. Not with another donkey. No one suggests that. No one dares. But with stories. Children sit where Anaxagoras used to doze and tell each other what they think he dreamed about. Bread sellers leave small crusts where he used to rest. A painter returns to sketch the tree again and leaves a patch of sunlight where the donkey would have been, as if waiting for him to reappear. And then something happens. Not dramatic, not loud, but something. One morning, a small olive seedling appears just beyond the ring of pebbles. No one planted it. At least, no one admits to it. But it grows fast. Within days, it's a hand's height. Then a knee's. Then taller. The elders call it the second tree. Not a replacement. Never that. A continuation. A quiet reminder that stillness doesn't end. It passes on. It roots. It grows again. And underneath its growing shade, people begin to sit. Again, just like before. Spring arrives with soft insistence. It doesn't rush, doesn't trumpet. It simply appears first in the length of the days, then in the warmth of the stone, and finally in the way the air smells like green things waking up. The city, which has never quite stopped talking about Anaxagoras, begins speaking of him differently now. Less like a legend, more like a season. A rhythm. Something that left, but not really. You pass the sacred olive tree every day. And now, beside it, the second tree. Still small, still young, but already casting a shadow just large enough for one child, or one philosopher, or one tired merchant to rest beneath. People treat it with reverence, not the overwhelming awe once reserved for the original, but the kind of quiet care given to heirlooms and lullabies. The ring of stones around Anaxagoras' resting place remains undisturbed. Someone refreshes the olive branches weekly. Another person leaves a single fig each morning at sunrise. A teenager once tried to steal the pebbles for spiritual souvenirs, but was caught halfway down the street when the pouch of stones burst open and scattered into the gutter like a divine rejection. He returned them, every single one, with an apology note written in olive oil on a slice of bread. Now, a sign stands beside the ring. Small, wooden, hand-painted in soft strokes. He still rests, so you still may, and people do. more than ever. It's strange how the city has become busier, louder, brighter, but the shade around that tree remains undisturbed. It's like the world moves in fast circles around a still center. And that center is this: a donkey once slept here. And Athens remembered. New customs have emerged. They're not official. There's no decree. But they happen anyway. In that lovely way cities develop habits without anyone really deciding to. Every year on the anniversary of Anaxagoras' last walk, the city holds a silence day. No shouting in the agora, no music, no debates, just whispers, quiet gestures, and gentle footfalls on the worn stones. Shops remain open, but only sell one item: bread and oil. Citizens are encouraged to sit, to listen, to be. One young philosopher complains, loudly, and is promptly given a donkey mask and told to ponder that for a while. He wears it for the rest of the day. Later becomes a priest. Children draw pictures of the second tree in school. One draws it with eyes. Another gives it wings. A third, clearly an overachiever, adds a full olive processing plant powered by donkey treadmills. The teacher hangs them all up in a line and labels the wall. The many faces of patience. Tourists come now, too. Not in overwhelming numbers, but enough. Enough to justify small signs in other languages. This is the place. Sit a while, you'll understand. Some of them do. Some don't. But even the ones who leave confused seem a little calmer afterward. Anaxagoras shows up in more plays, poems, mosaics, but also in strange places. A baker sculpts his likeness into loaves that curl at the edges like folded hooves. A potter creates an amphora with a braying mouth that releases oil in a slow, thick trickle marketed as donkey paste pouring. It sells out instantly. An aspiring playwright pens a comedy titled The Donkey of Destiny, in which Anaxagoras accidentally becomes king for a day and implements a series of laws about nap frequency and olive cake distribution. Critics call it deeply strange and surprisingly moving. Somewhere, you think, the donkey would have approved. But despite all the art, all the noise, all the attempts to capture what he meant, you still come back to the same spot. The shade beneath the sacred tree, the second one nearby, growing with quiet confidence, the ring of stones, the hush, and it's here that something changes in you. Not quickly, not with ceremony, but deeply. You find yourself talking less when you're here, thinking more. Not the frantic kind of thinking with questions and theories and worry, but the slow kind. The kind that feels like walking barefoot across sun-warmed marble. That feels like a long exhale you didn't know you'd been holding. One evening, you bring a friend from out of town. They don't understand at first. They poke at the stones. They ask if the donkey was real. If the gods truly planted the tree. If this isn't all just a charming tourist story layered on top of something else. You just shrug. Then you sit. They sit too. And for a while, neither of you speaks. A breeze stirs the branches. Somewhere nearby, someone drops a fig and quietly curses. The stars come out slowly, reluctantly, as if reluctant to interrupt. And then your friend leans over and whispers, "I think I get it." You nod. Not because you do, but because you don't need to. Historians still argue whether the second tree was natural or planted, whether Anaxagoras was a donkey or a fable, whether the rituals that have grown up around him reflect a true cult, or just a city that finally found something it wasn't embarrassed to love. But here in the shade, those arguments don't matter. What matters is this: something lived. Something gave without asking, and something stayed long enough for the city to become itself. And so it continues. The years pass, and the city shifts once more. Not in a rush, not in a collapse, but like olive oil settling slowly, gently, revealing clarity at the bottom of the amphora. Buildings rise, walls expand, philosophers come and go, along with their schools and scrolls and dramatically belted tunics. Markets swell, festivals bloom, and new gods flirt for attention. But beneath it all at the very center remains the tree, and the stone ring, and the memory of a donkey who taught Athens something it didn't know it needed to learn. The second tree is tall now, not as wide as the first, but proud in its own way. Its bark is smoother, its fruit fewer, but its shade is generous and calm. You sit beneath it sometimes and wonder if it knows whose roots it rests beside, if it remembers in some cellular, sappy way the one who never left, because the stories haven't faded, not even a little. They've just adapted. Now, there are songs. Simple ones, mostly sung by children, about donkeys who can sniff out lies, about olives that bloom in moonlight, about the bray that once echoed through the city and scared away a thunderstorm no historical evidence, but a very catchy chorus. One ballad ends with the line, "And he lay down where wisdom grows, and dreamed the city still." You hear that one a lot during harvest season. Speaking of dreams, they haven't stopped either. You still get visitors, strangers, pilgrims, the spiritually curious who sit near the stone ring for an hour or a day, and later claim they heard hooves in the night, or dreamed of slow blinking eyes in a warm patch of grass that smelled like home. Some even say they left their worries there, like placing them at the foot of the tree, beside the stones, and walking away lighter. No one laughs at them. Not anymore. There's a respect now, a maturity, not somber, just settled. Like the city finally understands that reverence doesn't always need horns or gold. Sometimes, reverence looks like silence, like a fig in the dirt, like a donkey-shaped cake on a small altar made of flat stones. And then, one year, something unexpected happens. A foreign dignitary arrives, some general or scholar or both. Important, wealthy, self-impressed. He tours the city with great ceremony, giving lectures, examining temples, nodding approvingly at amphorae. But when he reaches the sacred olive grove, he frowns. "This is the famous donkey," he asks, peering at the carved marker and the modest ring of stones. No shrine, no flame. He doesn't wait for an answer. Instead, he declares that Athens should honor its legend with a full-scale monument. Marble. Bronze. Perhaps a statue 5 times the size of the donkey himself. Rear end triumphantly. Mane flowing. The people hesitate. They smile politely. Then they gather. A quiet assembly, not loud, not angry, but unified. They explain, calmly, that the monument already exists. Not in marble, not in bronze, but here, in the silence, in the tree, in the way people sit, in the way they pause, in the way no one, not even the goats, walk through the stone ring without permission. The dignitary scoffs, shrugs, moves on. But the city remembers, and so the grove remains untouched. One evening, you return to the tree after a long absence. You're older now. Your knees don't quite trust the hills anymore, but your feet know the way. You follow the familiar path, winding past the fig vendor who always pretends not to recognize you, and up the slope where the stones shimmer like old coins beneath the dust. And there it is. The tree, the ring, the stillness. It hits you harder than you expect. The years collapse inward. The laughter, the braying, the smell of olives and warm fur. You sit slowly, carefully, near the same spot you always did. You whisper a hello. No one answers. but something rustles in the leaves above. And that's enough. Night falls. The stars blink awake, and a soft breeze picks up, brushing the branches, carrying with it the scent of pressed oil and sun-warmed stone. You lean back, close your eyes, and let yourself remember the rhythm of hooves, of breath, of a city learning again and again. That greatness doesn't always march. Sometimes it naps, and sometimes, when the world gets too loud, you need only return to the shade. Historians still argue what legacy means, whether it's carved in stone or passed in law or sung in the drunken hours after midnight. But you think maybe legacy is quieter. Maybe it's a place, a pause, a shape in the grass where something good once rested and left the ground better than it found it. Maybe it's a tree. Maybe it's you. And maybe it's a donkey. Years fold into decades. Decades blur into centuries. The city expands, contracts, rises, burns, rebuilds. Roads widen. Walls crumble. Empires change hands like worn-out scrolls. And still, somehow, the tree stands. Not untouched, no. It's struck by lightning once. Survives. It's scorched by invaders. Pruned by overzealous gardeners. Nearly uprooted during a forgettable land dispute. But it endures. Year after year. Leaf after leaf. The olives grow small in some seasons. Plump in others. But they grow. The second tree now towers beside it. No longer a successor, but an equal. The two olive trees curve toward each other slightly, their upper branches tangled as if whispering. Beneath them, the stone ring remains intact, carefully maintained across generations. You are gone by now. So are the children who sang donkey lullabies. So are the potters, the poets, the fig vendors with suspicious pricing schemes. But the story isn't, because stories, like roots, go deeper than the visible. A new child sits beneath the trees, not because they're told to, not because it's a sacred duty, but because the shade is soft, and the ground is warm, and there's something about this place that makes them feel remembered. They don't know the full tale, not yet, but they know enough. They know there was once a donkey, not a war horse, not a battle beast. Just a donkey with ears too long and patience too wide. They know he slept here. They know the city used to crowd around him, not with demands, but with olives and curiosity. They know that people believed in what he was, not what he could do. And that seems to matter more with each passing year, because in a world that races where time moves like arrows, and fame is loud and fast and forgettable, there's something subversive about stillness, about staying, about being so completely unremarkable. You become unforgettable. The stories evolve, as they always do. In one version, Anaxagoras is Athena in disguise. In another, he is a gift from Poseidon, sent in secret as a silent apology. One fringe scholar insists he was not a donkey at all, but a transformed oracle who, having spoken one too many prophecies, chose to spend his final life saying nothing at all. But no matter how the tale twists, one detail never changes. He stayed. That phrase is etched into the marble threshold of the academy now, just below the owl. It's quoted in plays, painted in murals, whispered before long journeys. He stayed. Even the festivals remain. Quieter, less theatrical, but real. Children wear donkey ears and walk slowly through the city. No braying, no fanfare. Just walking. Slowly. Together. 1 year. A girl breaks the silence to shout, "I think I understand him." The crowd bursts into applause. No one asks what she means. Because the story is no longer about a donkey. Really, It's about attention, gentleness, the radical act of not rushing, of knowing when to lie down and when to rise and when to do absolutely nothing at all, because that, too, is a kind of wisdom. A sculpture now stands near the original site, not where Anaxagoras lay, but just off to the side. It's small, almost easy to miss. A donkey, seated, not majestic, not idealized, just real, weathered, quiet. Beneath it, the inscription reads, "Patience is not waiting. It is being." The fig vendor's cart is long gone. The oil presses have moved further outside the city, but the trees still bear fruit. People still sit, and sometimes just before sunset, when the stones glow gold and the air holds its breath, you can almost hear it. The soft shuffle of hooves, the rustle of ears, the long, deep sigh of a creature who knew how to live by doing less. Historians still try to write the full story, but they always miss something, because the truth of Anaxagoras isn't in the scrolls. It's in the space between steps, in the shadow of a tree, in the silence that hums like a lullaby after a very long day. And that is why, to this day, if you ever visit Athens, and you find the right grove, and you sit in just the right patch of shade, you might feel something beside you. Not a breeze, not a voice, just a weightless presence, unbothered, at peace, still. So now, dear traveler, we let the story drift. We step gently away from the olive trees, from the soft hush of ancient stone, and from the echo of a donkey's bray that once changed everything. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. You've walked far through myth and memory, laughter and silence, through warm groves and soft sunsets, through the stillness of a creature who never asked to be remembered, and somehow always will be. The city remains, though it may look different now. New stones, new voices. But if you listen, really listen, you'll hear it, the quiet rustle of leaves that once sheltered a donkey with more wisdom than all the scrolls in the world. Let your mind ease, let it sway like branches in a summer breeze. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to explain why it touched you. Some stories aren't puzzles. They're pillows, meant not to be solved, but rested upon. Tonight, you've walked through one of them. Now, the trees are quiet, the air is cool, and the stars above Athens blink down with the soft familiarity of old friends. Close your eyes, rest easy, and remember, stillness is not absence. It's presence, held gently. You are here, and that's enough.